and thanks again for tuning in to the Rob and Mike Show. You know, we always start off the show like this, and I always want to say thank you so much. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for watching the show. We are just climbing up in subscribers, and I really appreciate you guys who have hit the subscribe button. While you're here right now, go ahead, right down there, just click on subscribe. It really helps us out, like I always say. It lets people, it lets YouTube know that people are watching our stuff, and they think that you think we're relatively entertaining. So I really appreciate that. I know Rob does. You guys, all the feedback that we've gotten has been absolutely fantastic. I will tell you guys, I apologize. Apparently in the last episode, I switched back to my black glasses, which weren't super popular. Apparently, so we're back to green. I'll do red next time. You guys let me know week to week whether we're going red, green, or black, okay? Because apparently the black ones were like, that's boring. So here we go. We've got green. That. And as we always start the show, hey, this is Rob.
That's Mike.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Rob to get his second started.
Well, once again, to reiterate what Mike said, thank you guys so much for the shout-outs, for the subscribes, for the likes on our page, for following us on all our social media, which, as you know, is The Rob and Mike Show on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Special shout-outs to a certain few people who have been wonderful sharing our stuff. Hopefully soon we can get a little acknowledgement for the people who are continuing promoting our stuff. We really love you guys for doing that. And today's topic is going to be fun. We are actually going to talk about, little spoiler.
Is fun the right word? It's super exciting! No, it's not that it's super, so much, but yes, fun, you're right.
It's a lot of fun, and we're actually going to talk about a genre that we know well because of when our parents grew up and when we grew up, is Blaxploitation movies.
Blaxploitation, right?
So this is an idea that Mike and I had for a little bit when we were actually first thinking about ideas for the show.
Yes.
And we kind of wanted to save this one to kind of close out February because of Black History Month.
It's Black History Month.
So we've been talking about this one a lot. And actually, after this video is done, you might get a little special thing about what's coming up next. And do we spoil it right now?
No, we don't.
We wait.
We wait.
Okay, we wait.
That's a wait on. Yeah, that's definitely a wait on. So we're doing Blaxploitation movies, and I'm super excited about this. One of the things that was cool about doing this topic for me wasn't just how cool all of these movies are, right? This is a huge genre. There's love stories in this genre. There's action. There's a lot of different
comedy.
things.
There's horror.
Right. There's comedy. There's horror. And this has been really a genre that's had, I would say, well, let's see, 30. This has been a 50-year kind of journey with the genre because we're still kind of we're there. We're kind of still in it. We're kind of beyond it, but.
We've had some resurgence in the 2000s.
Right. We have that. We're going to touch on right. But what was cool about this was that there was this opportunity to have kind of this research moment, right? And it was really neat because when we try to explain Blaxploitation movies to folks, it doesn't sound like that title really makes sense because. These were, this series of movies, the quick explanation of these series of movies that were done in the 1970s, which were focused on black culture, that had black stars, and things like that.
And I think the fact that the word exploitation is in there might throw some people off.
Right, and I think it does. I think it's difficult to understand why that's fit in there. And so through research, right, I found out some things about this, and I thought I knew things about this genre, right? But through researching this over the week, I found out there was all this stuff that I had no idea. So, you obviously during the 60s and the 50s, you have the civil rights movement going on, right? And so and so black culture is kind of on under a microscope because, they're on the news every day. There's a certain way that black people are presenting themselves because they want, there's legislature that we need to get pushed through. And so there's this really huge political claim. We talked about one night in Miami and the figures that had to deal with that. Well, so at the same time that all of this is going on, right, Hollywood is going through this huge crisis, right? people aren't going to go see musicals anymore.
Nope.
People aren't going to go really, like, during the 60s, there was this huge decline in people going to go see movies. So Hollywood at that time, so when you get to like the end of the 1960s, beginning of the 1970s, there's literally a money crisis going on in Hollywood. Hollywood is going broke. Right? And so, this is literally like, so you've got the civil rights movement going on, no one's going to go see movies, black power and black interest is at its absolute height, right? And so, hello Chicagoans, right? So this young black filmmaker out of Chicago, Illinois, who happens to be Melvin Van Peebles, right? Mm-hmm. Who we all know, his son is Mario, right?
Yeah.
So this Chicago native puts together this movie, right? And he does, like, I mean, he literally, like Melvin Van Peebles does, he stars in the movie, he does the soundtrack for the movie, he produces the movie, he directs the movie, he does all of this, right? And that movie, and so that's, and this isn't actually, and this is going to be really weird because it's not on my list, but it's an important film. So that movie is Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, right?
It just missed out of my top 10.
Right, it did. And on mine too. And like, it just didn't really, there were so many other films, but that film's pivotal because that's the film that's the film where Hollywood looks and goes, holy crap. We can put these B movies, which, you know, like that are, and B movie just basically means that it's a low budget film. It doesn't mean that it's not like great. And so what they said was, okay, so because again, we're not playing the black actors as much as we're playing the white actors.
Yeah.
And so they do all these low budget films, right, with like these not unknown, but relatively unknown black actors, right? And these movies are just making money hand over fist because they're not spending anything to make them, right? And so they're making these movies, and so that turns up, and so Hollywood, and so then there's the second film, and we'll talk about that in a second, that goes into this whole genre, right? And what happens with that second film is like, they put enough money into the film, right? And it just, again, and this is a major studio ends up doing this, and so they end up making so much money.
And you got probably a little bit crossover appeal,
right?
Because
You got the crossover appeal, you got all of that, and so sounds really strange. But see, the history of the Blaxploitation film, although we're going to talk about why we love these films, why like black empowerment was so important, Blaxploitation films during the early 70s bailed out Hollywood. That was what this was about. It was about the fact that Hollywood was broke. And all of these low-budget films that people were going to go see, especially the black community, was turning out in full force. But this was an insurgence of actual cash into Hollywood. So I think that was one of the things that I found during research that I thought was really cool. That, like, you know, especially like Melvin Van Peebles gets to hang on his hat, really, that he saved Hollywood in a way.
Yeah, and you know, there's actually his son did a movie about that movie playing his father, which was really good, underrated movie. So do we get into our list?
Let's start the list. I think let's
go. Would you like to go first?
You know what? I think I will go first.
Okay.
And this is really weird. So when I'm doing my list, right? And I'm having this hard time because I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, is this a movie that I'm picking because I love the film, or is this a movie I'm picking because it was important for the genre? And I decided that I was just going to go ahead and be like, yeah, I'm just going to pick the ones that like are kind of a little bit of both, but mostly like are films that like I really like. And so when I do this, this was hard because this was so hard.
This was harder than the soundtrack.
This was so hard, and the reason that this was so hard was because when I was going through this, I put this movie first, like not first as a number one, but
first one you wrote down.
This is my first one I wrote down, and the reason that I wrote it down was because it was such an impactful movie, and because it was, I think when we think about the genre of blaxploitation, there's a few films that stand out, and this one in particular, I think, for me, defines the genre more so than I think any other film. It's not my favorite one to watch. It's not the one where I'm just like, yeah, that one's on, right? Yeah. But it's also, it stands that, it's the one that sort of, I don't know, like stands the test of time, right? So for me, it's Coffee. I got to start in with Coffee. I got to come in with Coffee. I mean, that's, it's Pam Grier, who, I mean, you know, obviously Pam Grier's had this amazing resurgence of her career throughout the early 2000s.
She just works.
The woman is amazing.
Yes.
I mean, there's just...
And has aged.
And has aged flawlessly. Like, I don't know... Man, this is like going back to our COVID one night, the baby drinking. I don't know, Hollywood. You might want to check in with Pam. She is holding up extremely well. So I did that one, and this is what I like about coffee. And this is also kind of like a weird history lesson, right? So Blaxploitation, the term, was actually coined by the NAACP.
Okay.
His name, oh god, it's Julius something. I don't know. It's in here. It was Julius or something on that. Anyway, so at the time he was one of the leaders of the NAACP. I think I can't remember the state, so the NAACP was really upset about the way that black people were being portrayed in all of these films, right?
Mammies.
They were that's the weird part because when we get to Blaxploitation, right, we go from slaves and mammies and maids and butlers
to pimps and
hookers and things like that, right? But the thing is that these were characters that people were identifying with from like the hood, right?
Yeah.
From their neighborhoods. And so they were super popular. So this was also this really weird period where the bulk of black people, like, so your everyday, you know, like people on the streets, were at this weird sort of odds with the NAACP because the NAACP really wanted to keep projecting that sort of Martin Luther King. We all wear ties and we're all like, you know.
But this is what people were seeing on their streets.
Right. This is what people saw every day that they could relate to, right? And so in coffee, the reason that I think that this is so important is because Pam Grier's a nurse, right? She's not a hooker. She's not a criminal in any way, shape, or form, right? She's a nurse. Her little sister gets involved with drugs and gets hooked on heroin, and Pam Grier goes full on vigilante,
yeah.
Right, I mean, and that's
it's her kind of like Death Wish,
right? Exactly, it's like her playing a female version of Death Wish,
yeah.
And so there's nothing in this film that anybody can say, you know, yes, it fits into it's a Blaxploitation film. It was during that period. It was one of the movies that was there that helped bail out Hollywood, that like created this whole, you know, sort of film thing. And it's funny because, you know, I went to film school. I know that these movies are studied as a this is how you do this, right? And so it was. I love this movie because not only is it a really amazing representation of that genre, but it's also one of the films in the genre that sort of flies in the face of the whole idea that all of these movies are about pimps and hoes and hookers.
Which is funny because, ironically, my number 10 is that, but it's one of the granddaddies of the pimp movies, is The Mac. Now, it's on there because it is. Right. I'm not great details on that one, and that's why it's my number 10. Right. But but
there's so much about that movie, like what we know about pimp is from the Mac.
The
right?
Mac. So
like every pimp stereotype that we follow to this day. When you get dressed up as a pimp for Halloween, it's because of the Mac.
Right. And there's a couple other on my list that are like that. But so my number 10 is kind of simple, straight to the point. It's kind of the OG of the Blaxploitation pimp movie. Okay. You want me to go 9 or you want
You go. You go.
9. Mine actually is what I consider a homage to Blaxploitation, and it has starring Michael Jai White. I believe I said his name correctly.
Michael Jai White, yes.
Which is Black Dynamite.
Yeah.
And this one is, one, I think he's an underrated actor. 2, he is an actual martial artist.
He really is.
And he's really underrated. It is just a great homage and send up to what we're talking about, Blaxploitation. They take it very seriously. It is even for the fact that it came out later, it's still considered like an independent movie. But I mean, obviously it's better quality of film and directing, but it is a great, when it came out, I was like, oh.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, after this episode, come and see us again next week. We actually are going to be, instead of doing a weekly episode, we're going to be reposting a new video in just a few days with the second half of the episode that we just did today. we like talking about Blaxploitation so much that we actually went way, way over, but we couldn't get rid of any of it because it was all that good.
And that's the little surprise at the end that we didn't spoil for you. Yes, it is a two-parter. As Mike just said, just super excited. It was way too much information to get in one video. So please watch this one, the first one, and all the rest of our videos. Please go back, like, subscribe, share, and we appreciate all your time. If you want other videos that are two-parters of stuff that we really like to talk about, because you can tell from our videos, we love to talk. So please, check us out, social media, YouTube. We thank you all.
Take care.
Oh my God, what is this? And then I watched it and I was like, this is just an amazing homage to this genre. And they pay great tribute to it. It's not
absolutely.
It's not slapsticky. Right. It's not goofy.
No, and in that, because that you could easily take Michael Jai White out of that movie. You could put Richard Roundtree in there. You could put Jim Brown in there, and it would be the exact same movie. It would be like that, in the genre.
That movie could have came out in that era.
Right, absolutely. It could have come out in that era. It wasn't a spoof. It was done true to the spirit of
in which you can spoof it, but you have to do it right. But that'll lead to something later.
There are yes, you can kill a spoof. You can nail a spoof. Yes.
So you're 9.
Okay. Oh my goodness. So and again, this was this. I'm glad that we just talked about yours because for me, this movie was. I'm trying to think of like that. You know those movies where they cast like 3 people in it that you're just like, are you kidding me? They're all in one movie. Like how much was the budget on this film? Right? Yeah. You know? And so for me, it's 3 the Hard Way. 3 the Hard Way. Dude, Jim Kelly, Jim Brown, Fred Williamson. That's like what was that movie where they had like it was like where they got together like Schwarzenegger and
Expendables.
Right. Yeah. It was that level of like movie, right? Because it's like the black male superstars of the time.
And there's another one that's on the list who kind of did that. It was filmed in Gary of all places, called Original Gangsters, and it's like Jim Brown, Pam Grier, Richard Roundtree.
Right. Like all of like the greats right are in like one. And so 3 the Hard Way so here's the other reason that I really love 3 the Hard Way. I love 3 the Hard Way because 3 the Hard Way has this completely fanciful it's not the bad guys aren't, because the bad guys are just white supremacists, right? But the idea of what they're going to do, right? Like they're going to actually like poison the entire black community, right? And so here's the crux on that, right? This movie comes out around the same time that the black community is fully aware that like drugs are just being dumped into the community, right? And the movie touches it. The movie, if you're watching it, it makes those points between the two, where it kind of lets you know that like in a way that like this is what this is about. Like we're talking about the fact that like this is really like happening, right? Like the black community is being poisoned. Like they are out to get us. Like people are doing things to jack us up. But it doesn't do it in this way that like unless you're like living it makes like you could watch this movie and not know, right? But it's this powerhouse like action drama that like the movie, it's one of the greatest like movies.
It did not make my list, but I can see why it's on your list.
Love 3 the Hard Way.
And I'm sure we'll have some crossovers on our list, but I like that so far.
We're zigzagging.
We're zigzagging.
Yeah.
So that leads to your 8. And I can't wait to talk about my 8 because I'm very excited.
All right, so I actually on my 8, and I know my 8 is probably 3 to 4 like away from like where it would be. I think probably on your list, but it's not. Now I'm going to say the reason for my 8 being where it is again. I